to question number 3 in the name of Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan. Minister, 2 minutes.
Under the new framework for junior cycle, schools will design their programmes to reflect not only the key skills and statements of learning of the framework, but also to reflect teacher qualifications and students' identified needs. All junior cycle students will be required to study English, Irish and Maths. Thereafter, schools will have the flexibility and autonomy to offer short courses and to choose from 18 other subjects, including history. The vast majority of schools already offer history, and over 90% of students choose history, although it is currently compulsory in only half of our schools. Curriculum choice is important in motivating students to learn and to remain in school to completion of senior cycle. Overall, I am in favour of leaving the decision on what is offered at the discretion of each school, but I would stress the fact that 90% of all second-level students are taking history.
Yeah, 1 minute, Deputy.
All right, thank you, Minister, for that. I mean, there's no doubt that there is a lot of alarm and disquiet among those who teach history, among the History Teachers Association, among people who teach history at third level, like Professor Dermot Ferriter, by people within the history industry, like Katrina Crowe from the National Archives, at the way in which they see history being downgraded because of these proposals. Because the point is, we all believe that history needs to be taught as a full subject over a substantial period of time and in a chronological framework, and is seen as part of that core curriculum. I think what you're suggesting as part of this new proposed junior cert is the way in which history is taught in TY, in a sort of a modular way where people will look at, and I think it's yourself, you said that each student will value local, national, international heritage. And that's part of what happens at transition year. So a particular person might be looked at, a particular event, particular organisation. I know in my own school we looked, for example, at women in particular in 1913 and in 1916. One of my questions is that the History Teachers Association came in and met the Education Committee. There was very involved, very frank, very open discussion, and I'm just wondering, did the officials report back to you, and are you in a position to take on board what they were talking about at that meeting?
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
I happened to see some of that debate that took place here with the committee, and I'm very sympathetic to the study of history right through to 6th year, as indeed are 90% of students who actually study it. So I can't, quite frankly, understand why history teachers are so fearful that their subject is suddenly going to be abandoned. As you know yourself from your own professional background, in the traditional free voluntary sector, it is compulsory in many schools, but across the entire spectrum of the 723 post-primary schools that we have, it isn't compulsory, but yet 90% study it. There is a lot of clear evidence to suggest that if the curriculum in terms of what's required to be studied by different students is too prescriptive and doesn't allow for different interests to be expressed, that there will be early departures from the school system, and that's a negative effect that I don't want to have either. But I have every confidence in the interest that Irish people have in history to ensure that the vast bulk of them will continue to study the subject, and not as a project in transition year at all. That's not the intention. And I think what the History Teachers Association should do is engage actively with the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment to look at how their concerns can be addressed within the new curriculum.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy O'Sullivan.
So I think the fact that up to now people have chosen it, 90% of the students, but that's no guarantee that under the proposed framework that that's going to continue. And I think, you know, it's almost like, well, when we have something that's working, why are we trying to reinvent it? There's no doubt that the Junior Cert History programme did need reform, particularly at second year. But there still is the fear that it's not going to be able to convey all the skills that are involved with the teaching of history. And there, literacy and numeracy as well. There's also analysis and critical thinking. And there's also the sense of, you know, how can we know who we are as a people unless we know where we came from? And I think it's also important in terms of, it does teach bias and it does teach about the role of the media. And I don't think that will come across with the new proposal. And again, you know, we saw the example from England where they had changes, and I think somebody made the point that when Margaret Thatcher died, nobody in a certain generation knew who she was. Maybe that wasn't a bad thing, but I mean, I think there was a point being made there.
Thank you, Deputy.
Very briefly, through the Chair, Deputy, the whole thrust of the junior cycle reforms are to actually have a holistic approach to teaching at second level, which we do not have. You meet a primary school teacher and they tell you that they are a school teacher, they teach children. But too many secondary school teachers that I have heard say that I'm a history teacher, I'm a chemistry teacher, I'm a science teacher. It's precisely that silo concentration that is manifested by some teachers, not all, that we're trying to actually have a holistic approach to the curriculum at secondary level, so it's similar to that at primary level. And in that, the use of history for a variety of differing learning outcomes will in fact retain its primary role as it currently has. All I would say to those teachers, and certainly the Irish History Teachers Association have articulated those concerns, is to engage productively with the National Council of Curriculum Assessment and to work with them and to ensure that the core values of historical education are retained within the new curriculum development. And I don't think there's any conflict there at all, but I do recognise that many teachers are fearful, and I want to address those fears.
Thank you, Minister.
It's a positive suggestion engaging with the NCCA, but the History Teachers Conference recently was, will history survive the decade of commemoration? And it would be very ironic if in 2022 we have classes of young people in this country who do not know what those decades were. I'd also make a plea for geography as well, even though I wasn't involved in it, but I do think they're two core subjects. Thank you.
90% of all students study geography. I don't know for the life of me what your fears are, that because the curriculum is going to be improved, that suddenly the two most popular subjects, which are taken voluntarily nearly in the main, are suddenly going to disappear off the curriculum.
Thanks, Minister. Okay, thank you, both. Now we move on to question number 4 in the name of